Yeah, yeah. Can I tell you a story about what happened on my hike?
I suppose.
It was a very exciting moment for me. So,
Okay.
So we're going to get into...
Oh, wait a minute. Is this celebrity status stuff?
No, not celebrity status, but I was like very pleased that somebody like recognized the podcast. So we were hiking, and I think we were coming back across field. And by the way, the distance from Mount Field to Mount Willie is ridiculous. Like in my head, I always think it's only going to be like a short hike, but it's like it goes on forever. Yeah, it's so annoying. But anyway, so we came across Mount Field, and we were just hanging out there. I think we were just adjusting our gear. So I have a new backpack. So I was talking to another hiker, and she's asked me about the backpack, and I was like, "Oh, I love it," and I'm going to talk about it in a little while on the gear review. And I had mentioned to her, I was like, "All right, I'm going to do a little bit of marketing." So I mentioned to her, I was like, "Oh, I have a podcast, and I'm going to actually do a gear review about the backpack." And she asked me what the name of it was, so I gave her the name, and she was like, "Oh my God, I listened to the podcast." So I wanted to say hello to Sarah and let her know that I was so happy that she had actually heard the podcast, because I figured there's only like 5 or 6 people that'll listen to this dumb show, but it's pretty cool.
That's pretty amazing, actually, when you think about it. What are the odds?
Yeah, exactly. So but that's about the extent of the marketing I've done, is like, yeah, listen to my podcast.
That's funny. I've received a few random texts from people, and they all seem to be like general contractors, which is a weird trend that we're developing.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it makes sense. They're doing work all day on houses. They need something to listen to.
Right. Oh, boy.
Broadcasting from the Woodpeckers studio in the great state of New Hampshire. Welcome to the Sounds Like a Search and Rescue podcast, where we discuss all things related to hiking and search and rescue in the White Mountains of New Hampshire. Here are your hosts, Mike and Stomp.
All right, so episode 11, Stomp, we're going to be talking about gear.
Top of the morning to you.
Yeah. We're recording in the morning, which never happens.
Yeah, it's strange.
I'm in my new area too. I'm not in my normal Woodpecker studio location.
Yeah, I noticed that. Where are you? Upstairs? Downstairs?
I'm
different
upstairs.
rooms. Wow.
Upstairs in
the kids gave you the boot.
Second level studio. Exactly. So this week we're going to focus a segment on summer hiking gear. Just getting into hiking and trying to figure out where to start for gear choices. We will open up our backpacks and gear closets to share with you what we wear and carry while hiking in the White Mountains. In addition to the gear discussion, we will talk about the upcoming Mount Washington road race coming up on Father's Day weekend. We will also cover some listener questions, including the best personal locator beacons, finding out exactly what Stomp means when he says he was a Woodstock baby, and the origin of the Woodpecker studio name. And of course, we'll still have some search and rescue stories to go over as well. I'm Mike.
And I'm Stomp. Let's get started.
All right, Stomp. So we are, as you alluded to earlier, we are recording in the morning here. So there's no beer discussion. I mean, if you're drinking a beer at 10 o'clock in the morning, you can discuss it, but I'm hoping no.
Mimosas?
No.
No, I'm drinking a nice black coffee. And boy, do I
what's
need it.
What's your brand of coffee? Maybe we can plug that.
I don't know. I raided my folks' little box downstairs. They're moving in this week. Woohoo! So they said, "Hey, here's our box of coffee that we, Keurig cups or whatever." So I think this is like a glazed donut flavor. They get everything at one of those big bulk stores. I think it's not Costco. I forget the name of the other one. Anyway, everything's Kirkland.
Oh, yeah. That's like the Costco brand, right?
I think so.
yeah, I think it is. I don't go to Costco, but I got to get on that.
Yeah.
When you do backpacking, do you do, like, I've found like some people like the backpack, they'll say like, I don't bother with coffee, even though they are coffee drinkers, but you do coffee in the morning, right? When you're out hiking?
That's one thing that we do. We'll do like those little instant packages. And, I have this really rudimentary, I don't do the whole jet boil thing. It's just all that stuff just takes up so much room. I just have a, basic cup and a little Walmart special screw-in furnace and a single propane tank so I can heat up a couple things anyway. Some people go crazy with that stuff.
Yeah. My friend Jonathan, I've talked about him before. Like he has a nice like coffee press, and it's
oh man,
for winter hiking, it's awesome.
Well, yeah,
it's
I could
a lot
see
of
that.
work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for colder temperatures, sure, but yeah, I mean, I'm always really basic when I do my backpacks.
Yeah, it's weight versus luxury.
Yeah,
right?
for sure.
So yeah, but I do. So my recommendation for coffee when you're backpacking is I just get the instant coffee, but the Starbucks instant coffee because it's pretty strong and it works out pretty well. So I just boil my water and drop that in there, and it's a good start to the day. But anyway, I'm drinking just coffee myself, so no beer for this show, which is the first time we haven't talked about beer.
Yeah, right. Sort of strange. It's 10 o'clock. We have 2 hours to go. So if we run over, we can crack one at noon.
Exactly. So any recent hikes for you or anything outdoors?
Yeah, well, last night we had a qualifier. This is mid-May, and for PEMI, the search and rescue team. And we went up to Greenleaf, and I held the back of the line, and I made it up to 3K, which is cool. That's basically Eagle Pass. And at that point, still plenty of sunlight, but I just figured I'm not going to push it. The rest of the crew was ahead of me, maybe a couple hundred feet, and they were telling me over the radio that there was still a good deal of snow. It's amazing. It's like it kicked in right after 3,000 feet. There was maybe a 4-foot wide monorail, mushy, crappy, dirty snow. They made it up to the hut in basically boots, a couple put on spikes, but I turned back at 3K. And just to play it safe, after my surgery. But I feel good. After this, I'm going to actually go out and try something small too. Maybe head up Welch, come back down. I feel like I'm on a roll now, finally. How about you?
Nice. Well, you're on a roll, but just don't roll down the hill.
Yeah, so far so good. This hip of mine's feeling pretty solid, but just, I don't know, just my endurance. And I feel a little like not unbalanced. Well, maybe unbalanced, I suppose, at times, but we're getting there.
I was on the Willie Tom Field range last weekend. I went up with my friend Tom, who, again, I mentioned Tom before in the show as well. So he is working on his 4,000 footer. So I think he had done Field and Tom before, but he needed to get over to Willie. So I was talking to him, and we were trying to figure out what direction to go. And I told him, I was like, let's not go up Willie Ridge. I said I didn't want to deal with the ladder. So I was like, let's just hit Avalon, and then we will go up to Field and Willie, and then make the call on whether or not we want to get over to Mount Tom. So we experienced it almost the exact same scenario as you. So we bare booted to Mount Avalon, which is on the 52 with a view list, and got up there. Trip. It's an amazing view there. I mean, everyone talks about Mount Willard and how the view is really nice for like an easy hike. So Avalon's a little bit more difficult. It's definitely steep as you get up to the top, but the view is sort of like Willard plus. You've got that whole view of Webster Cliff and out into the Crawford Notch region. So that was perfect. So we bare booted up to there, and then when we got into the coal between Avalon and where you start to ascend up Mount Field, we started dealing with the same thing. It's like a little over 3,000 feet, and we had the snowpack and monorail, and we mostly bare booted up to the peak of Field. I think we maybe around 400 feet below the peak. We just said, you know what, it's time to just put the spikes on. So we had spikes on, and again, this was second week in May. So, it was monorail all the way across the Willie Ridge, and then we came down. I got a call with a family situation. I had to get down a little bit early, so we skipped Tom and just got out. But it was a great day. Weather forecast was supposed to be a little gloomy with maybe some heavy wind and rain, but it turned out to be like no wind and perfect. So definitely a great day.
How crowded were the trails?
They were pretty sparse, so we saw maybe like 4 or 5 other groups. I mean, and that area gets a lot of hiking, so nobody was going up Avalon except for us.
We didn't see anybody last night on Greenleaf, which is amazing because last year during the pandemic, there was like a conga line of people. So I don't know where all the people are yet, but next week is going to be super warm. On the PEMI Insta page, I put up a little post about don't be fooled by the warm weather because it's still treacherous on those trails.
Yeah. Can I tell you a story about what happened on my hike?
I suppose.
It was a very exciting moment for me. So,
Okay.
So we're going to get into.
Oh, wait a minute! Is this celebrity status stuff?
No, not celebrity status, but I was like very pleased that somebody like recognized the podcast. So we were hiking, and I think we were coming back across field. And by the way, the distance from Mount Field to Mount Willie is ridiculous. Like in my head, I always think it's only going to be like a short hike, but it's like it goes on forever. Yeah, it's so annoying. But anyway, so we came across Mount Field, and we were just hanging out there. I think we were just adjusting our gear. So I have a new backpack. So I was talking to another hiker, and she's asked me about the backpack, and I was like, "Oh, I love it," and I'm going to talk about it in a little while on the gear review. And I had mentioned to her, I was like, "All right, I'm going to do a little bit of marketing." So I mentioned to her, I was like, "Oh, I have a podcast, and I'm going to actually do a gear review about the backpack." And she asked me what the name of it was, so I gave her the name, and she was like, "Oh my God, I listened to the podcast." So I wanted to say hello to Sarah and let her know that I was so happy that she had actually heard the podcast, because I figured there's only like 5 or 6 people that'll listen to this dumb show, but it's pretty cool.
That's pretty amazing, actually, when you think about it. What are the odds?
Yeah, exactly. So anyway, but that's about the extent of the marketing I've done. Is like, yeah, listen to my podcast.
That's funny. I've received a few random texts from people, and they all seem to be like general contractors, which is a weird trend that we're developing.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it makes sense. They're doing work all day on houses. They need something to listen to.
Right. Oh boy. But it's been fun. It seems like it's starting to stick a little bit.
Nice. All right. Well, moving on to website updates. So slasherpodcast.com, we got a couple of updates to be on the lookout for. So we're covering gear today. So one of the things that we have added to the website is a full gear list. So I'm putting in my summer day hiking and my summer backpacking gear list. And then Stomp, I don't know if you're going to put together a list or not, but we'll start with mine. And then if you feel motivated, you can put yours in.
Yeah, I can do that. Mine's sort of weird because I don't really, I pack for missions, so it's sort of like this. It changes every week, depending on the weather and this and that. So it's tough to nail it down. But the fundamentals that you've listed are fantastic, and we can really dig into those. Yeah,
and I think that there's a gear list on the PEMI site as well, like what you guys carry on missions. So we can always link that, I think.
Yeah, that's based upon the SLASR list, North American Search and Rescue, and there's a funny story about that. A lot of the new recruits show up having looked at that list with all that stuff in their pack, and they're ready for the qualifier with a 70-pound pack. Like, no, it's your discretion.
Yeah. Well, I do remember like years ago, like I don't know how long you've been on Search and Rescue, but I'm giving away some secrets here, but Stomp is a transplanted masshole. So for a while he was living in Massachusetts. So when he moved up, like getting on Search and Rescue, I think was one of the things he did pretty early on. So I think he had like talked about like with all the gear stuff that he had been looking at, and I was like, wow, this is just crazy. But we've obviously discussed why you need that type of gear. But anyway, we will have my gear list at least on the website. So if you want to take a look, if you're trying to figure out like, do you have everything you need? I'm not promising that I've got everything covered, and we'll talk about that in a little bit more detail when we get into the gear list. But it's a good resource for you to use.
Absolutely.
All right, so Stomp, first segment here is listener questions. So now that we are out in the in the podcast universe, we are starting to get some questions. So I think some of the stuff came up through the Instagram page. Some of the stuff came through my wife. And then some of it had come through the Facebook page and email. So I wanted to just cover a couple of things here. So the first question, Stomp, is for you. You had mentioned in a previous show that you were a Woodstock baby. And
wait a minute. Whoa. People are asking about this?
Okay. Well, my wife is asking about it. So,
that's funny.
Yeah. So, What does that mean? Does that, when you say you're a Woodstock baby, does that just mean that you were born in 1969, or were you actually created at Woodstock?
No, just in reference to the date. And I was born in November, which is after the fact, but my dad went to Woodstock while my mom was pregnant with me. So it's like great. He's in Woodstock. What if she went into labor early? Sorry, you can't make it.
So he went to Woodstock, and you're, yeah.
Oh yeah, my dad experienced the whole thing. I mean, he showed up when the fences were pushed down, and he got in for free and just saw the whole concert. I mean, crazy. But my mom and I were back at home, and I was born in November '69.
Oh, your mom is cool. So she gave him a free pass.
Can you imagine?
She was like 6 months pregnant?
That's the ultimate.
Woodstock?
Exactly.
Wow.
That is the best free pass right there.
All right. Well, I was hoping that it would have been a little bit more of like you being like created at Woodstock, but this is a pretty good story though. Yeah. So the next question that I had received is we haven't covered this, is what is the origin story of the Woodpecker Studio? So we record out of what we call the Woodpecker Studio, but there's actually two. There's our North Studio and our South Studio.
Yeah, we're separated by a couple hours here. I'm up in Thornton, but the name Woodpecker actually came from a now closed pub eatery actually in Thornton down the road here on Route 49. And that's about it. Pretty straightforward.
Yeah. There wasn't anything. I think it was like our first episode. We just decided to like call our recording areas the Woodpecker Stick, because we used to go there and eat and Stomp. We used to get like 7 Mai Tais after hiking.
Right, and half of them would be for free because my wife was the bartender. So pretty cool.
Yeah.
But that was a great place. I mean, I still hear a lot of people saying, "Man, I wish that place was open." They probably did have the best pizza in the area, and that's, sadly one thing that's sort of lacking around here. Although Tartaglia's down at the exit 28, fantastic. Chesley's not too bad, but yeah.
Nice. And the building's still there, right?
Oh yeah. I mean, they tried to sell it, but nobody bit. It's a great spot, but apparently the building has some issues.
Yeah, it's an older building. So this is the exit that on the way to Waterville Valley. So if you are listening and you want to open up a restaurant in the area, take a look at that building, and maybe you can rebrand it Woodpeckers 2 or something. Yeah,
that's a good idea. When we hit it really big, we can expand into the actual building.
Yeah. All right. So. Moving on to the next question here is this is from Brent, who is on our Instagram page. So Stomp, you're gonna have to answer this one because
I've got a couple. One.
Yeah. So he's basically saying his question is, what are the best areas or loops in the Whites for legal stealth camping sites, without giving the exact location because that would defeat the purpose.
Well, I would have to suggest starting with the 500 highest list, because there are some really amazing loops that are outside of the popular 4Ks and this and that. I would look at the Cockermouth area down near Hebron. That's a great area. I'm a big fan of the smaller 2K, 3K mountains. They're just absolutely beautiful, and there's a lot of open woods, so you can set up a tent, set up a little camp without getting in trouble. And don't get me started on that. I mean, geez, last time we went up Greenleaf last season, people were camping within 5 feet of the trail. They're like, are you kidding me?
I see that a lot too. I see that a lot too. Like I remember hiking out to Bond Cliff, and there was just probably 7 or 8 campsites just right off the trail, and I'm not prepared for this, but there's definitely some legal guidelines on the Forest Service website that we'll link in the show notes around, was it 200 feet off trail? But there's a lot of variables to that. There's certain regions where it doesn't matter, you just can't camp. But like you said, these smaller peaks are usually a good choice.
Yeah, another thing comes to mind, the eastern side of the Pemi Wilderness, on the eastern side of the Bonds. In that area, tons of room. Or the deeper, more remotes of Sawyer River Road. Just fantastic. Beautiful areas to go.
Yeah. Probably the best spot that I've found in the Whites is, and I won't give out the exact location, but like in Willard Notch, which is between the Weeks and Mount Cabot. There's there's some flat sections there that are well off trail, that are really well established, close to water sources.
Yeah.
The other thing that comes to mind with a question like this is where hammock camping versus tent camping can make a difference, because I feel like you do have a lot more options if you're doing hammock tenting or hammock camping.
Yeah, if you're talking below tree line. If you're talking camping above tree line, it's harder to do that on the more popular trails. But if you get up towards Nash Stream Forest and this and that, you can actually plunk your camp right there on the top of a mountain and not have any trouble. Those are things to think about too. Just the more out of the range peaks will get you above.
And I always, whenever I'm going out, I'm always looking at the contour lines as well, and I'll take a look, and I'll just look for those big circles, those flat areas where you're up in elevation, but you're seeing those flat areas. Sometimes you can get screwed over and they'll be marshy, but a lot of times that's where you'll find good campsites.
Yeah, agreed.
So, all right. So the next one here, Stomp, this is one for you. So this is from Graham, and I think this came in through the Instagram page as well. Mm-hmm. And his question is, what's the feeling in search and rescue communities around personal locator beacons? Do they really help that much in terms of rescues, or are they more giving people a false sense of security or an excuse to not be prepared? And he said, thanks, he loves the show.
Yeah, I haven't polled the membership, so I don't know the exact sentiment about PLBs, but personally, I think it goes without saying that it does give people a sense of security, knowing that they can just press this button and we're going to come out there and save their butts for whatever reason. That being said, some of the new variations on PLBs are really handy because they offer two-way communication. So I carry a rescue link, which is just a bail me out button if I get in trouble, because I do a lot of backpacking solo, bushwhacking, and I don't know. It's just what I've had for the last few years, and I've done a lot of research about it, and it's reliable in terms of using satellite and everything else, and getting the message out there. There are satellite trackers, which are just basically, program messages where you can't really communicate two ways. And then you can go up in price and get a satellite communicator like the Garmin InReach. I'm getting the sense that this is becoming more popular. I'm seeing more people on the trails, and some of the people that we've actually come to the aid of have used them, and they've been really helpful because it gives us an idea of where they are, where they're moving, and they can tell us in real time what's going on. So that's something to look at. Garmin InReach is just the latest and the greatest. Then, of course, there's this, satellite phones, which is the most expensive option, if you want to communicate and be sure that you're going to be able to reach somebody.
Yeah. Yeah, and I see this come up a lot, this idea of the more safety nets we give people, the more accepting of risk they may be while going out into the wilderness. And I go back and forth on it because I look at the metrics on search and rescue events, and I've heard the one metric that's hard to pin down is the total number of people that actually go hiking on an annual basis. But I've seen through different reports that it's figure there's 2 to 3 million hiking events per year in the Whites, and then search and rescue events are somewhere between where you actually have to come out and rescue somebody, maybe around 150 to 200 events per year, and then maybe another 100 where you've got to either walk somebody out or help them navigate via the phone. So the percentage of people getting in trouble is so minute that I don't necessarily think that the idea that the more safety nets we give people is going to be driving an increase in search and rescue. But maybe someday we'll reach a point where it comes to that. And there will always be cases where people are just acting recklessly and not doing their research, and they need a rescue. But I don't know if access to these safety net technologies is what's driving it.
Yeah, it's a really good question. But it's a handy tool amongst other tools and other gear in your pack, which we'll be talking about shortly. I mean,
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it all goes together.
Yeah, so this is good. We actually got questions from listeners now, so we're growing up.
Yeah, I would encourage people to do that. I mean, the Instagram page is SLASR Podcast, SLASR Podcast. It's easy to find, and it's easy enough to send a direct message, and any questions, just drop them in there, or even under the post themselves, and as well as the Facebook page.
Yep, yeah, and we've got an email address, which is slasherpodcast@gmail.com, that we check every 3 months or so. So send us a message there too.
Dude, that email gives me a headache. I opened it up and I shut it off immediately. Like, what is in there?
Yeah, we're getting a lot of spam. So,
Slasher's hiking topic of the week.
First segment is in the can, so we're going to move on to our next segment, which is something that is near and dear to both of our hearts, and this is basically how myself and Stomp met. So we're going to talk a little bit about the Mount Washington road race. So we're in early May right now. We just went through Mother's Day, and we are, by the time this gets released, it'll be right around the time of the Mount Washington road race, which is going to be June 19th and 20th this year. So I think that's Father's Day weekend.
It usually is. Yeah, they usually run it on that weekend, but yeah, I'm not sure. It's good to see that it's running this year.
Yeah. So it was canceled last year due to COVID. I had, we'll talk about how to get into it in a minute, but I basically had an entry. They allowed anybody that had an entry last year to defer to this year. So, I'm going to be running it. So I'll have a recap of it after I run it. But I wanted to do a segment on this just because it's coming up. And then also this is how, Stomp and I met. So I was looking for a ride down for the first race I did, and we met on a message board, and I didn't get serial killed when I met him and his lovely wife, so we've stayed in touch, and we've been friends ever since.
Yeah, it's really cool. I'm trying to pinpoint what date that was. Was it 2008? I have the dates that I ran it. I figured that out. I did my homework.
That would make sense. I think 2008 makes sense because my third daughter was born in 2006, and I got back into running. And then, I got really into sort of the mountain races for a while. And it was right around that time where I did Mount Washington and Cannon and a few other mountain races.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. We can talk about that. Do you want to give the deets, or do you want me to cover that?
I can give the details on the race at a high level. So every year, this race is held, and it is held on the Mount Washington Auto Road, which is accessible from Pinkham Notch, Route 16. The road is 7.6 miles, and the vertical elevation is 4,650 vertical feet. So you start a couple thousand feet up. I think Mount Washington's like 6,288 feet high, so you do the majority of that climbing, and then the maximum grade on the road is 22%, which comes at the end of the race. So the very last section is 22%. Mm-hmm. There's a couple of sections that definitely push 20% before that, but it's a grind of a race. So they usually get around 1,000 runners, and it's just a fantastic event.
Yeah, it sure is. And it's been happening since 1936. That was the first race. And they've been having it annually. Every year it's open to, all categories. Women, men. What are the Clydesdales? I mean, they have all these different categories of folks that run it. But going back to 1936, can you imagine that? Sneakers didn't exist. I mean, I did some research about shoes. And basically, if you're familiar with your flat-soled modern Converse, that's basically what they were running up these trails in.
Well, I picture them running up in like suits and
like Great
top
Gatsby,
hats and
right?
Stuff. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I can only imagine. But it's run pretty much every year. I mean, occasionally they have canceled for bad weather, or in some cases they will actually close the course down to the halfway point just for safety because of the weather up top. But like Mike said, it's open to about 1,100 runners, and it's by lottery unless you're one of the top seeded runners that run it annually. And the lottery's held in March. Mike's been lucky to get into it more than I have. I got in 4 times. I ran it in 2007, came in at 2 hours, I think, right at 2 hours. That was my goal, was to at least make it at 2. 2008, I ran it again, chopped off 10 minutes, and then I just literally couldn't get into the lottery until 2011. And then the last time was 2013.
Yeah, the lottery is very. I'd love to find out. Like I looked up one time, like who was in charge of the lottery, but like I'd love to talk to that person because it's very streaky. Like I had like a 3 or 4 year period where I couldn't get in, and then I've had like 2-3 year periods where I've gotten in. I think this is going to be my 6th or 7th time. Yeah. But I do know there's also like besides the elite runners, there are, I think, some spots for running clubs, and there's also automatic entries for people that do the Mountain Goat Series, which is a series of like 6 to 8 mountain races throughout the New England area. So I think if you do every one of those races, you get an automatic bid into Mount Washington. And my guess is that the popularity of that Mountain Goat Series has increased over time. And that may explain why it's been more difficult to get into the lottery.
Yeah, I also tried 1 or 2 years trying to apply as a group, like my daughter and I. That didn't work. So I don't know what the method is, but good luck.
Yeah. So the lottery sign up is typically I think it's like you sign up from like mid-February through the end of March. So it's like a 6-week period where you can just sign up, and then they make the announcements sometime around March, I think. It's been a while, so I can't remember exactly, but just keep an eye around the beginning of the year. There's a website, and we'll put a link to it in the show notes if you're interested in doing it. Yeah. And the way that I term the race is that essentially, even with the elevation, like this is essentially the equivalent of a half marathon, maybe a little bit more difficult because it's a shorter distance, but the elevation obviously is a grind. But my times have been pretty close to my half marathon time. So I'm usually somewhere between like 1:35 and 1:45, I think, on my better times, although I'm getting older and slowing down a bit. So.
Well, speaking of speed, the record is held by Jonathan Wyatt, and this is unbelievable. He did it in 56 minutes and 41 seconds, and that's still the record. I've been following this guy for many years now. He's quite the athlete. He runs all over Europe, I mean, just worldwide. And there are so many great athletes like Dave Dunham, Simon Gutierrez, Eric Blake. A lot of these runners are just absolutely incredible to watch. And they're always in the race, and it's just awesome. Awesome to see. It
is, yeah. And my most impactful memory of the race was the 2013 race. So I don't know, Stomp, if you want to talk about that, because that is in our show outro, right? Our exit music.
I don't know if that was cut from 2013. I'm not entirely sure.
Oh yeah, I don't know, but Dave McGilvery, who is the race director. I don't know if he's still the race director, but he was in 2013. He was also the race director for the Boston Marathon. So I ran the 2013 marathon in Boston, and I finished before the bombs went off. But he had done the introduction to the 2013 Mount Washington road race. And, it was pretty close after the marathon bombing. And he gave this speech that was really memorable, and it was pretty inspiring. There was a guy that actually ran it. He carried an American flag all the way up with him. So
that guy does it every single year.
Yeah, he does.
It's amazing.
So a little bit about the auto road for people that are not familiar with it. So again, it's right past Pinkham Notch Visitor Center, and it starts, flat for about a couple of 100 feet. There's a little toll gate right there. So you run across it. And then from there, once you get past that little flat section, it is uphill the entire time. And I tend to split the road in half. So there's the section where you are below tree line, and then there's a section where you're above tree line. So I think tree line starts showing up around 4,000 feet, which I think is around the mile 4 marker. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then once you, and the lower section is actually a little bit steeper than the upper section, believe it or not, on the elevation gain. But once you get above tree line, you'll make your way around the mountain, where you'll sort of head towards Huntington Ravine. And then once you get to, it's the Nelson Crag junction, there's a U-turn. So the road turns to dirt. You hit the U-turn, and then you head back up towards the Great Gulf. And then it's like a steady climb from miles 5 and 6, where you'll parallel the Great Gulf. And then eventually you sort of turn back towards, running towards Tuckerman's Ravine, and you get that view out into the, southern Pinkham Notch. And then eventually you just make your way to the finish area. There is one flat section around mile 6.5. Do you remember that? Like, that's like the greatest feeling ever.
It feels flat as a board too, after all the inclination on the way up.
Yeah. And once you get past that flat section, you go up a little bit more and you get into the parking lots. And that's where the crowds start kicking in. And you'll usually have, because the runners will have spectators that will be driving up to drive them back down, you'll have hundreds and hundreds of people cheering you on at the very end. And, the volunteers make sure they give you nice warm blankets and food and everything you need to warm back up, because it's usually pretty cold up top.
Yeah, and if you want to volunteer, I mean, they're always looking for people to host the water tables at the mile markers on the way up the trail and stuff like that. So there's opportunities there for folks that are interested. Can we talk about your warm-up? Because this is the funniest. The psychology before the race kicks off is brutal. It's so nerve-wracking. I don't know what you do to prepare for it, but what I would do was run around the Great Gulf. What is it? Great Gulf ski trails, the cross-country ski trails. Glen.
Yeah.
The Great Glen, isn't that what it's called?
Yeah, it's like, exactly. They're like bike trails that are right next to the entrance way to the road.
Yeah, I'd run those for maybe 15, 20 minutes just to try to warm up, and then the rest of the time I was sitting in the porta potty, just nervous as hell, like, oh my god.
Yeah. My routine is almost exactly the same. The only thing is I skip the running ahead of time, so I'm just in the porta potty.
So you don't warm up?
I was never a warm up person. I
have to. Ugh.
5Ks I would warm up, but other than that, if it was like a longer race, I never do anything. I do some stretching, and that's about it. But I see people like sprinting and running like 2 miles ahead of time and all this stuff, but I just never really subscribed to that.
Yeah, I would have to warm up, because it's that first, half a mile, maybe 15, 20 minutes where your lungs are just exploding. That's just so uncomfortable, and then you finally ease into it. But I like to avoid that first warm up period when you start the race.
Yeah. And my advice for anybody that's training this, especially if you're a first-time runner, there's 3 approaches you can take. The first approach is you do the treadmill, because you're never going to be able to replicate the hills. Unless you live in New Hampshire, you can run up Bear Notch Road or run up the Kank or
Hurricane Mountain.
Yeah, Hurricane Mountain. There's a few places where you can get some really good elevation in New Hampshire. Even like the Lakes region, honestly, has some good extended hills on it. They're not as steep, but they're still pretty good. But you can do outside hill running if you want. But really, the treadmill with a 12 to 15% grade is a good way to train. There's some other people, like I've read before, Dave Dunham, has said that you don't necessarily need to do a lot of elevation, that if you increase your mileage significantly, that'll give you the same impact. But for me, the biggest piece of advice that I will give people is run the actual road before the race. And psychologically, it's the most impactful thing that you can do because it takes the mystery out of it if you haven't done it before. And I typically will run it on Memorial Day weekend, and I'll start in Pinkham Notch. I'll run Old Jackson Trail out to the auto road, which gets you to about mile 2 of the auto road, and then I'll run up to the top. And usually it's a good time to run because I think the day that I typically do it is the first day that the observatory is open. So I'll run up, grab a hot dog, and then run back down.
Awesome. I have just like, I know this is sort of like selfish, but I got to talk about me and my body for a moment. Do you mind if I talk about my body?
Nobody wants to talk about your body.
My
but
glorious, glorious body.
Yeah.
When I was running this race, I weighed 165, and I showed you pictures recently of that first race, and I was like wafer thin. And then when I started having my hip issues, I shifted gears and just went straight into hiking full time just to save the hips. And with the heavy pack and stuff, I weigh 210 now. It's like, what a world of a difference from trail running to just pure hiking and backpacking. That's a huge, huge change in my body structure. It's amazing.
Yeah. That's a lot of luggage you're carrying extra. So, and the other, one other thing I will say is, yeah, definitely like the lighter you are going uphill, the better it is.
Oh, absolutely.
But the other thing I will say is like, I would say the vast majority of people that are doing this race are at some point walking. Like I would say maybe 10% of the runners are actually running the entire race. And then what you'll see is some combination of like a walk and a run. Some people do like 100 steps running, 100 steps walking, and then a lot of people just power walk the whole way up. But for me, I run the whole way, and I just basically a very short cadence in my runs. I barely overlap my feet, and I just
the born to run technique, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's
bird steps.
Yeah, it's short, fast cadence, short steps is the deal. So you just find your gear and just keep moving. So I'm basically doing like 15-minute miles the whole way up. So
yeah, you cruised up. I could never do that. I would just try to walk, run, speed walk. For some reason, my calves cramp up near the top, and I think it's worse when there's a cold wind blasting my muscles. That's been my experience. Like when you hit that last hill, that's when my calves decide to throw a fit, and you're holding your calves as you're crawling up, and everybody's clapping like, oh great.
Yeah, exactly. And they the weather's obviously a factor. Sometimes you got the wind blowing in your face, but I've actually, most of the races I've done have been pretty decent weather. I think if anything, the last two I've done have been like way too hot compared to what I was expecting. So
yeah, and also you do get a shirt. You can get a shirt and you get a medal, right? They still doing the medal?
Yeah. I have a bunch of those medals hanging downstairs.
I gotta find mine. I'm not even sure where I put mine, but those are cool.
Hang them in the Woodpecker studio.
Right. Oh, there you go. Mount Washington Road Race. Epic.
Yeah, so I will, once I do this race, so I'll do another recap of it and then post some pictures and stuff, but it's great. And if you're around and you want to hike Mount Washington that day, just be prepared. It's going to be big crowds, but it's a fun environment, and it's definitely worth checking out.
Mm-hmm. Are you ready for SLASR's weekly gear review?
All right, Stomp, you want to get into my gear closet now?
Yeah, let's check it out.
All right, so our next segment is gear. So we've talked a lot about safety, and we highlight a lot of news stories about people getting in trouble. So I think gear is a critical aspect of making sure that you stay safe. So we wanted to talk a little bit about just basic gear list, and this is essentially summer day hiking or sort of 3-season day hiking. And what I did here is I put together, I was getting ready for my hike, and I just put together a list of everything that I'm wearing, everything that I took on the trip, and I just put it together in a list form here to kind of go over, and I was going to run down it and just get Stomp's perspective on the good, the bad, and the ugly about what I'm bringing out there. So I'll start this off by saying for day hiking, I really do not give a shit about weight. So you'll hear a lot of people talking about making sure that you're ultralight and all this stuff. Like, I really don't care. It's 2, 3, 4 extra pounds one way or the other doesn't make that big of a difference. And most of the weight that I'll carry that's really heavy is going to be water and liquid anyway. So I can take steps to manage that if I need to.
Mm-hmm. So what's first on the list?
Clothes. We're going to talk about clothes. So the first thing I start out with is a wicking T-shirt. So you don't want to wear a cotton T-shirt. So everything is wicking. I don't even know what is wicking. I know what it is. I know what it is when I see it, but I really don't know what it is.
Yeah, I mean, it's just generally synthetic fabric that is designed in such a way that the water travels out away from your body versus staying in the fabric. So it's constantly moving away and out. And then convection, just air, wind, just drying off the shirt or pants.
Yeah. So I have, I've got a bunch of wicking T-shirts from old races that I've done. I don't really worry too much.
Wicking cool, man. It's wicking cool.
Wicking cool, exactly. The other thing that I have been wearing a lot lately is I've got these Eddie Bauer mountain shirts, which are short sleeve shirts. They're collared button-up shirts.
Oh, nice.
And I actually love them.
Yeah.
I love them because when it's really hot, I just undo the buttons. And it's just really flexible, and the collar looks nice. I feel a little bit dapper with my collared shirt on.
I go the same route. You can look pretty snazzy.
Yeah. So I'll mix and match. So depending on, like, this weekend when I went hiking, I wore a wicking T-shirt, and then I had the Eddie Bauer mountain shirt over it. But when it warms up, I'll wear one or the other, and no rhyme or reason to why I wear them, but I'll just pick one. Mm-hmm. And then what I'll always include in my gear is a quarter zip long sleeve shirt. Again, wicking material, and I've got 3 or 4 of these. I've got an REI brand, I've got a New Balance brand, and I think I've got a Nike brand. So typically, like, that is what I'll wear if it's a cool morning and I'm starting off. Mm-hmm. And then as far as pants and shorts go, for pants I use what's Cool Revolver pants, which is KUHL. These pants are zip off, so they can turn into shorts. Mm-hmm. I haven't done that with them yet. Typically, if I think it's going to be shorts weather, I'll just wear shorts. But these are nice.
Those are great. Generally, those hybrid pant short setups are great because the junction where the zipper is actually can be a nice tick barrier. I've found. Yeah. They walk right up into that fold of fabric and they get stuck there. So pretty handy.
Yeah. And I don't wear pants that often when I'm hiking, and if it's outside of winter season, like if I'm gonna start off below probably like 40 or 35 degrees, and I know it's gonna warm up a little bit, I'll probably still wear pants. But if I'm starting off at like 45 or 50 and I know it's gonna get up to 60, 65, then I'm wearing shorts. And my pick for shorts and again, this is all men's gear, so I can't help the ladies in this one, but we will have to get somebody on that can give more perspective on female gear. But I wear Marmont shorts in the summer, and I'll link the details on those, but they're perfect. They've got side pockets so I can hide stuff in there, and I've got probably about 6 different pairs to 6 different colors that I use. Mm-hmm. So
good stuff so far. No complaints on my end.
Yep. I got darn tough socks, so I've got a mix of like light running ones, I've got mid-weight, and then I've got heavy wool socks. And depending on the situation, like I think the last weekend when I hiked, I just wore like the heavy wool socks with my trail runners. So mm-hmm. I've got a bunch of different darn tough, but I think you can do the smart wool, darn tough, and I don't know what other brands there are.
Yeah, those variations are fine. I mean, sometimes people put a really thin liner sock inside that, but how many pairs do you bring during the summer? Do you bring an extra pair of socks or just go with the one?
If it's warm weather, I just go with the one.
Yeah.
Typically, I bring an extra pair of socks for the car, so I'll just strip my socks off and then put a new fresh pair on when I'm driving home.
Right. That's great.
Yeah. If I'm doing it overnight or something, I might bring an extra pair.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So
I sort of roll the same way.
Yeah, and then as far as outerwear goes, I have basically a puff that I will bring. So I have a Patagonia Nano Puff that does not have a hood, Colder weather, I have an Eddie Bauer Evertherm that is a little bit warmer. I rarely bring that with me on summer hikes, so it's usually just a lightweight Patagonia. But there's a million different brands of this stuff: Mountain Hardwear, LL Bean. Any lightweight down jacket will do. Mm-hmm. And then I will bring rain gear. So I have two options here. I use an Eddie Bauer backcountry shell, which is an Event brand. So there's really two materials. There's Event and then Gore-Tex are the two sort of heavier shells. Mm-hmm. And then when it warms up a little bit, I'll put the Eddie Bauer away because it's a little heavier, and I just bring a North Face raincoat, which is a 2-layer raincoat. And the thing about this rain gear is you're going to get wet if it rains, so I don't worry about it too much.
How heavy is this stuff?
The Eddie Bauer is a winter shell, so it does a good job keeping the rain out, but it's pretty heavy. But the North Face is like nothing. It's just a light rain barrier.
Yeah, gotcha.
Not breathable at all, though, so you end up sweating.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So, and then after that, just hats and gloves. I always bring those, even if it's going to be 90 degrees. I bring hats and gloves.
How about shoes?
So Brooks Cascadia Trail Runners is what I use.
You never really go with boots, do you? You prefer trail runners?
I don't, yeah. I just prefer them. People talk about like ankle support and all that stuff, but I just find that, you get attuned to it. You're working without a net, and you just got to be careful about that. Yeah,
sure. I mean, in search and rescue, we tend to encourage people to avoid the trail runners just because of the demands of the rescue. It's just... that's why I sort of roll with boots and backpacking boots in general. I'm a little leery about trail runners, but that's just me. I think my ankles are a little funky, so don't want to tweak them.
Yeah. I mean, you got three choices. You got the trail runners, which I would say probably like 75% of the people I see out there are wearing. You've got traditional boots, and then you've got those like Keen and what's that other brand? I can't remember.
Oh, there's a dozen. There are so many now.
Merrell, I think, is the other one. So you got Keen and Merrell, like sort of traditional hiking shoes, which I find those to be too stiff and a little too heavy. So I just like the trail runners.
No, it looks good. I mean, it's great stuff. It's all wicking. That's the big key. Just avoid the cotton. Cotton's a nightmare.
Yeah, exactly. And then I have the last thing on the list here is my sunglasses. I've got Oakley flak jacket sunglasses, which are nice because when you scratch the lenses, you can just pop them out and put new ones in. Mm-hmm. So, do you? There's two schools of thoughts with sunglasses. Like I know some people that are like, I just buy cheap ones and I don't care if I lose them or hack them up. And there's other people that tend to say I'm going to buy higher end ones and that's going to force me to take care of them, which is the avenue that I go with.
Yeah, I'm not a big sunglass person. I try not to wear them. I just like the natural light. I will wear safety glasses if I'm bushwhacking, but I don't really have a preference for glasses.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay. Next topic here is backpack. So in a summer day hiking trip, typically you want to have a backpack that's somewhere in the like 20 to 35 liter range. 35 liters is huge for a day pack in my view, but I typically have something that's like under 25 liters.
See, that's funny because I think 30 is way too small.
Yeah,
I'm like amazed that people go out hiking with these smaller packs. Like, what? How do you do that? How do you fit all that stuff in there?
Yeah, I mean, I'll put this list on the show notes, but I fit everything in there.
It's amazing.
So, but this week I have a brand new pack, which I'm very excited about. It's the Ultimate Direction 20 liter fast pack. So I've been carrying a Deuter 22 liter pack for the last like 5-6 years. I've done every hike with it. Mm-hmm. I have a bigger version for the backpacking trips, but I just switched it out because this Ultimate Direction it's a trail runner vest setup. So it has all the pockets in the front, so you can get water, snacks, cell phone, everything you need on those shoulder straps, which is great. And then they market it as a 20 liter pack, but I think it's probably closer to 25 liters. It's huge.
Yeah.
So big fan of that. And then as far as navigation goes, I've got a compass, I've got a whistle, and a temperature or thermometer combination that I use. So I rarely ever use the compass because I've got one on my my Garmin watch, and then I've got a Gia app on my iPhone, which I also use for navigation. And then I always carry a White Mountain Guide waterproof map. So worst case scenario, if I need it, I've got the map and the compass. If I'm doing okay with my technology, I'll rely on the Gia app on my phone or directionally my Garmin. So I've got pretty much everything covered there.
Yeah. Yeah, I usually throw in a GPS just for the hell of it. But then again, I'm just doing a lot of bushwhacking, so that's my big fallback. GPS if you get turned around while you're out there. But yeah, compass is great. I actually have a new Casio Rangeman, which has altimeter, barometer, compass. It's phenomenal. I mean, check it out. It's really a great watch.
Yeah, I have a Garmin Forerunner 935, I think. So it's got all the altimeter and barometer and compass and all that stuff too. So it's worth the investment. I mean, these watches can be expensive, but if you're going to be out hiking a lot, it's definitely worth getting them.
Yeah, absolutely. How about first aid?
Yeah. So I was looking through my first aid. So the biggest thing that I would stress to people is I have a splint. So you can get like a SAM splint.
Yeah.
Most of the issues that we see in search and rescue calls that are sort of not reckless are typically due to lower leg injuries. So having a splint, I don't expect that I'm ever going to need to use it, but you never know. And then also you having one in your possession while you're out hiking, you could be in a position where you can help somebody out if they get injured as well.
Mm-hmm. It's really handy, some of the small diameter duct tape. If you have to splint up somebody's leg and you don't have a proper splint, you can use poles or whatever. Using a shirt, a long sleeve shirt to tie up a splint isn't the greatest. So, I usually have some form of tape or even tie wraps to a point. You can do a lot of good things with those.
Yeah. The splint I have is it's just a regular splint, and then I have like I don't know what the length is, but it's like that medical wrap where it just sticks to itself. So the idea is you can brace that, and then I talk about this later on, but I've got paracord and zip ties and things like that can also be helpful.
Yeah.
But splint and a wrap for first aid, and then I've got just a small first aid kit where I have gauze, Band-Aids. Assorted size of Band-Aids. I've got wipes. I've got burn gel, Tylenol, Advil, Benadryl, tweezers, and then I carry my sunblock. And then I have an extra pair of contact lenses because I wear contacts. So just in case I lose them or something, I've got a backup here. Other things that I have here in my miscellaneous section here, I carry my iPhone for photos. Like I said, I've got a number of different zip ties that can be used for all sorts of things. I've got paracord, which can be used for all sorts of things, as well as like if you've got low visibility situations. We've talked about this in the past, like you can use this with a partner to sort of guide your way to different trail markers. Duct tape. I've got a nail file. I don't know why I have a nail file. I think this could potentially be helpful if you forget to like cut your toenails and you're getting some injuries. I'm pretty sure that happened to me once. Yeah.
It goes along with the college shirts. You just got to look proper and good out there.
Exactly. Matches, lighter. I've got a small Swiss Army knife.
Those multi-tools are cool.
Yeah. People don't like those, but I like it. It's a little heavy, but it does the job. And then I've got a Solo bivy. Which is just a space blanket bivy for emergencies.
Yeah.
Carry toilet paper and an ultralight trowel to take care of nature calling. So, do you want to break down how that works, Stomp?
Oh. Yeah, the suggestion is to dig a hole. Is that what you're referring to? Is the proper method?
Yeah.
Yeah, dig a hole 6 inches plus deep and try to aim the best you can into that hole and then cover it up after the fact. There's a lot of pollution on the trails. People aren't necessarily covering their paper and feces properly these days, and it's pretty nasty, on the busier trails. So take the effort. I don't carry a shovel, but I will find a pretty rugged stick nearby and just dig out a hole, and that works pretty well.
Yeah, try to get as far off trail as you can, because what you don't want to happen is to get everything all set up and then have a bunch of college students walking by you as you're doing your business. Not that that's ever happened, but just a fair warning. Other items that I have in my pack here is I have a headlamp and battery. So I have a nice black diamond headlamp, and then I also keep like a backup Walmart headlamp. So I have two, just in case I run into anybody that doesn't have a headlamp, and just in case mine breaks.
Yeah.
I carry black diamond hiking poles. So I've had these for years, and I've got a broken tip on one of mine, so I got to take a look at that and figure out how to fix it.
Collapsible?
Yes, yeah. So I have collapsible. I know that there's also the twist kind.
Yeah.
I'm not a big fan of those twist kind. I feel like they're not as effective. I don't know why. And I've got a trash bag for rain. So I do not carry a pack cover for rain. If it starts raining, I just have a trash bag where I put everything into, and then I put the trash bag inside my pack.
Gotcha. Yeah, I don't typically. I'll bring it if I go backpacking just for legitimate trash, but I usually don't bring a trash bag. Sometimes I will bring a tarp for rain purposes and things like that.
Yep. Food and water system here. So take your pick on food. I mean, for me, it's peanut butter crackers, cheese. I'll get a turkey wrap, Cliff Bar. If it's warm out and it's the afternoon, I'll take a beer with me. And then my go-to sort of in my pocket snack is I mix peanut butter M&Ms and pistachio nuts. So I get sweet and salt.
Yeah, that's awesome. I like these new tuna packets. I find that tuna is fantastic for any muscle cramps and things like that. Plenty of salt and electrolytes.
Nice. And then my water system, I mix and match on this. So I have a bunch of soft water bottles that I'll use, and then sometimes I'll take my Nalgene, and then sometimes I have a 3 liter bladder that I'll take if I know I'm really going to do some big miles and I just want to throw it in my pack and have easy access to it. So always take my mini. So I have a Sawyer mini filter and a bag that goes along with it.
Those are great.
So yeah. So my technique with water is I'll do research ahead of time. If I know where I'm going and I know there's going to be a good water source, I won't start with any water, and I'll just filter everything as I go.
Yes. Sawyer has the filter that you actually put on a water bottle itself. So you just fill up your water bottle and then put the filter on top like it's a cover. I know that like our buddy Nick uses one and he raves about it.
Yeah. So that's the Sawyer mini that will fit. Yeah, that'll fit on the water bottles.
Oh, it is the mini. Because I thought you were referring to the kit with the bag and the filter that you put on top. But okay, that's good.
Well, so that kit has it attaches to a bag, but then it also attaches to water bottles.
Okay.
So it can go in either direction. I do tend to use the bag, and then I'll fill up like my bladder or the soft water bottles and just have access to them. But I know a lot of people just use it directly on a water bottle.
I've seen issues with those bags. I mean, you're putting a lot of pressure trying to filter those. Side story on that. You should clean the filter too, because it can make it a lot harder to filter the water from the bag if the filter is clogged up. So they do recommend that you clean those things pretty frequently.
Yeah. I'll usually back flush them after every hike, and then you want to store them in a dry area, and you don't put them in the freezer or anything like that because it'll ruin the filter. So good stuff. And then the other optional things that I call out here is sometimes I'll take Gatorade with me because water just gets bland. I'll put Nun tablets in there to give it a little bit of flavor. And then if it's a really hot day, I might pop a couple of salt tablets before a hike just to avoid cramping. I'll bring some energy gels if I have them. And then we'll have typically, I think I had already said this, but I'll sometimes bring a beer for the summit. And one thing that I will do with my beer occasionally is if I'm bringing a beer and it's a hot day, I will use a water bladder, and I'll fill the bladder up with ice and a little bit of water, and I'll put the beer in a plastic bag, and I'll stick the beer inside the bladder with the plastic bag so the beer doesn't get exposed to the water, and that way I'm drinking my water and ice, and then I'm also keeping the beer nice and cold.
Gotcha. That's awesome.
It's pro tip.
I'm a huge fan of the Pedialyte. I've been using Pedialyte for several months now, and if you notice, they're just starting to kick in some serious ads. Trying to promote it for sports and athletic events and things like that. So Pedialyte's great. It's a little less sugary than Gatorade and those types of drinks. So check that out.
I'm going to stick to Gatorade. I like my sugar. So, all right. So that's a wrap on my my gear. But before we close this out, I just wanted to call out some shit that I don't carry, and some of the stuff I don't worry about. But like I said before, I don't care about weight. I am not carrying a personal locator beacon right now. That may change. I think given the show, I may start buying some of these things and test them out so that I can give some perspective. And I don't have like a dedicated GPS, so like a Garmin InReach or something like that. I don't carry beer spray. I learned that lesson from when Stomp blasted himself.
Infamous.
Exactly. I don't carry a big knife. Sometimes I'll see people walking on the trails and they'll have like big giant Rambo knife on their hip. And I'm like, what are you going to do with that? Like, what? And then I also don't carry any metal containers for water. Like I know with my kids, like that's very popular. Like they have these big, heavy metal thermoses that they use. And I don't carry any of that stuff.
Yeah, that's old school.
Yeah. And then we talked about boots. I don't wear boots. I don't wear traditional hiking shoes. So that's it. It works for me. I haven't been search and rescued yet with all this gear.
I like it. I like the pack. I mean, it's good. I go a little heavier. I tend to double up a lot of stuff because I'm always thinking like, what if I come across somebody that needs, warmth or whatever? So I'm always thinking a little bit. It does impact the weight of the pack, unfortunately. So that's why I tend to go with a little bigger pack.
So we'll do a gear review on like overnight backpacking. My perspective is a little bit different. Like to me, like on the overnight backpacking, like I definitely am more focused on making sure that I'm optimizing my weight strategy. But for day hikes like this, I'm packing for comfort and safety versus speed. Very good. So that's a wrap on this. Like I said, I will post all of this information on the SLASRpodcast.com website. And I'll also put in, there's a couple of different like sites and resources, like Philip Warner's like Section Hiker page is like the go-to where I'll always go to get gear ideas. So I'll include a couple of links to different places besides our location where you can go for gear advice. Mm-hmm. All right, Stomp. So moving on to search and rescue here. It sounds like we've got a couple of news stories, and I don't know if your volunteer organization was involved in any of these, but do you want to start off with the latest and greatest on search and rescue?
Yes, sir. Yeah. We were not involved on two recent rescues, but I want to give big props to Lakes Region Search and Rescue. On May 9th, there was a rescue on Mount Potash Trail. A 65-year-old hiker, Kenneth Winitzer from Conway, was hiking with his wife, hurt his hip while descending the trail. Passing hiker was able to hike back up to get cell service and was able to put a call out for the pair. And apparently the couple was prepared with a personal locator beacon. So as to our conversation, they were able to activate it. So I'm not sure what message got received first by Fish and Game, but along with conservation officers, Lakes Region Search and Rescue responded. He was placed in the litter and carried out to a U.S. Forest Service road adjacent to the trail, and they were out by 7 p.m. And he was taken to North Conway for further treatment. And then there was another rescue that came on the 14th, or actually the 13th, shortly after 1:30. A hiker was injured on the Wentworth Trail in the area of Mount Israel. That's a beautiful area. Have you hiked over there?
Oh, I love it. I love it. The Wentworth Trail is great. That's a great hike.
It's so beautiful. That area is just fantastic. But this person was hiking with a friend, injured her ankle just below the summit, and they had first aid equipment. They treated the injury best they could. Despite their efforts, she was unable to bear weight on the ankle, so they called for help. In this case, they had help from Sandwich, Tamworth, Moulton Borough, Center Harbor, Holderness. Holderness Fire Department. And Lakes Region Search and Rescue again. So here you have a situation where you have a volunteer team working alongside local EMS, which is, it happens fairly often. It happens here quite a bit on Welch Dickey. So good cooperation. They got this person out by about 5:30, carried her 2 miles out from the summit down to the trailhead. So bravo, Lakes Region. They're a fairly new team, but they're doing some good work down there.
They're staying busy.
Oh, yeah. I used to tease them so much. I'm like, you guys have mountains down there?
Yeah. And they honestly, I hate to give this stuff away, but like the Ossipee Range, the Squam Range, the Belknaps, I mean, those are the views and the challenges as far as like, the up and down and elevation. Like some of it's not as hard as the White Mountains, but there's a lot of hikes in there that you can get a lot of distance and a lot of elevation. So,
yeah, rugged too.
Yes, no doubt about it.
Yep. So that's what we have for our rescues. Fairly Q-word, quiet, but we have some warm weather coming. So let's see what happens over the next few weeks.
Yeah. I have one news article that popped up that I was like very interested in, and I'm going to follow this one closely. And it's a human remains were found by some
in my neighborhood.
Yeah. What have you been up to, Stomp? What have you been up to? So a group of fishermen, they were following a brook into the woods off of Sandwich Notch Road, and they discovered human remains on Sunday, March 2nd. So the remains are being analyzed by the state's chief medical examiner in the hopes that they'll be able to determine the identity of the person in question. So anytime that I hear that a body has been discovered, I'm always thinking in terms of like, okay, these missing people that we covered in the previous episode, like, could it be any of them? And
right.
I immediately go to Mara Murray, and I'm like, it could be her.
Yeah. So keep a lookout on this. Have you heard anything yet?
Well, what happened? So the Mara Murray universe on like the social media is just crazy. Like anytime there's a body discovered, like there was a body discovered off of like a walking trail down in southern New Hampshire like a few weeks ago, and everybody was like freaking out about it, saying like, I wonder if it could be her. But like Mara Murray was missing in Haverhill. I think this body was found in like, I can't even remember. It was like Nashua or something. So it's like so far away. But this one here, what happens is typically Mara's sister Julie will get notified by the police anytime there's a body that's found in the area. So they notified her very quickly on this and let her know that the remains that were found were of a male. So she put an announcement out and said, like, everybody calm down. It's not Mara. It's an unidentified male. So I was taking a look through the cold case list. There was nothing listed on there that stood out to me as obviously who it might be, but I did pick up a news story of somebody who had gone missing a couple of years ago in Laconia. I don't know. We'll have to keep an eye on this one to see who it is, but it just goes to show you that like when these missing people pop up, they can be out there for years and years. They can be close to trails, and typically, it's going to be some mushroom hunter, some fisherman, or a regular hunter that's going to stumble across the remains. Or a bushwhack hiker.
Yeah, exactly.
Those are like the four areas where they'll, you might stumble across something. But we'll have to keep an eye on this one.
Let me just read that paragraph. It says the remains described as skeletal were found near a stream in Sandwich Notch. To access the site, responders traveled down Sandwich Notch Road, then Algonquin Road, up a snowmobile trail, and then walked along the stream. So, I mean, somebody put a lot of effort into this one.
Yeah.
Super remote.
Yeah, it's crazy. And the bones were scattered through the woods as though they were, picked at by animals. So it'll be very interesting to see what comes of this. So I'll keep an eye on this one, and we'll update everybody when we hear something new.
Right.
So, Stomp, I think that's a wrap. We covered a lot here. We talked about COVID. We talked about gear. We talked about search and rescue and the Mount Washington Road Race.
Yeah.
Oh, shit. We didn't talk about COVID. What am I talking about? let me do this one over.
Yeah, hold on. We got to give you a PCR test quick.
Yeah. So that was a good show, Stomp. We talked about Mount Washington. We talked about gear, and we talked about a bunch of search and rescue stuff. So very exciting, and we'll call this one a wrap.
Yes, it's a wrap, and coffee's a good thing, huh? These morning sessions are pretty good.
Yeah, I'm shot out of a cannon, so have a good one.
Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed the show, you can subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. If you want to learn more about the topics covered on today's show, please check out the show notes and safety information on SLASRpodcast.com. That's SLASR podcast.com. You can also follow the show on Facebook and Instagram. We hope you'll join us next week for another great show. Until next time, on behalf of Mike and Stomp, get out there and crush some peaks.
Now covered in scratches, blisters, and bug bites, Chris Staff wanted to complete his most challenging day hike ever.
Fish and Game officers say the hiker from Florida activated an emergency beacon yesterday morning. He was hiking along the Appalachian Trail when the weather started to get worse. Officials say the snow was piled up to 3 feet in some spots, and there was a wind chill of -1 degree.
And there's 3 words that describe this race. Do we all know what they are? Only one hill!
Lieutenant James Nealon, New Hampshire Fish and Game. Lieutenant, thanks for being with us today.
Thanks for having me.
What are some of the most common mistakes you see people make when they're heading out on the trails to hike here in New Hampshire?
It seems to me the most common is being unprepared, and I think if they just simply visited hikesafe.com and got a list of the 10 essential items and had those in their packs, they probably would have no need to ever call us at all.